Jay Balagan had never enjoyed traveling, yet here he was, standing amid the bustling expanse of Murtala Muhammad International Airport in Lagos. He wore loose-fitting khaki trousers and a linen shirt that kept him cool against the Nigerian heat, while a wheeled suitcase rattled across the polished floor behind him. At first glance, Jay looked like any typical passenger, perhaps a young professional heading out on a business trip or a cousin returning from a family event. But nothing about him was quite as it seemed. Jay's arrival in Lagos was all part of a much bigger puzzle, one that would soon reveal the systemic cracks in airport security and bring to light a man who seemed to thrive on intimidation. Jay stepped into the snaking security line and immediately sensed the tension that pervaded the space. Families with drowsy children glanced nervously at the uniformed guards, and solo travelers tapped their feet in impatience. The intercom droned with repeated announcements about baggage restrictions, overbooked flights, and last-minute gate changes. Meanwhile, overhead fans did their best to circulate the thick, tropical air. None of that fully explained the uneasy vibe in the queue. Jay himself felt it, a stifling sensation that more than just the typical scramble of travel was brewing here. He had studied the rumors meticulously. Complaints of harassment, arbitrary extra checks, and jarring confrontations had poured in for months. The allegations pointed to an individual named Maxwell Max Adeyemi, a towering private security officer assigned to assist official airport personnel. People whispered that his presence alone could make a mild traveler sweat bullets. Jay was here because higher authorities had had enough. He was no ordinary passenger. He was an undercover inspector with the African Union Commission on Aviation Security. Secret directives sent him across the continent to sniff out bad actors who might be abusing their position at major airports. And this was one of his biggest cases yet. The moment Jay joined the line, he spotted the man in question. Max stood near the center of the checkpoint, a rangy figure with squared shoulders and an ever-present scowl. His black uniform shirt was ironed to an almost militaristic crispness, complete with shiny black boots that clicked thunderously whenever he paced across the tiled floor. Even from a distance, Jay could read the guarded alertness in Max's posture. The officer's gaze swept over every single traveler, as though searching for the slightest reason to intervene. Jay had been briefed extensively. Max was rumored to be especially harsh on older people, foreigners, and anyone who looked different from him in language, dress, or skin color. If you appeared vulnerable or simply rubbed in the wrong way, he would single you out in an instant, subjecting you to humiliating bag searches and harsh lectures about security protocols. This knowledge alone made Jay's pulse quicken. He reminded himself to remain calm and focus on the mission. He took out his phone, its screen displaying a special app for covert audio recording, activated it, and slipped the device discreetly into his pocket. He was ready if Max decided to turn on him. After nearly half an hour of inching along, Jay finally reached the front, where an official airport worker was checking passports against boarding passes. The worker gave Jay a routine nod and was about to wave him onward when Max loomed closer, arms folded tight across his broad chest. "Hold up," Max said, his voice slicing through the chatter. "I want to see that ID again." The official worker frowned. "He's clear, Mr. Adeyemi. Everything matches." Max didn't budge. "Hand it over," he barked. The bored expression on the worker's face turned to resignation. Any attempt at challenging Max usually ended in an argument nobody had time for. Jay, feigning mild confusion, complied. Max peered suspiciously at Jay's passport. Then, as though it were the biggest inconvenience in the world, he muttered, "I'm going to need you to step aside for a full bag check." Jay blinked. "Is there an issue?" he asked politely, keeping his tone steady. Max's expression was impossible to read behind his dark, hawkish eyes. "There could be," he said. "Follow me." Jay obeyed without fuss, hauling his suitcase to a small area off to the side, partitioned by waist-high panels. This was where Max performed his extra screenings, an enclosed space that seemed designed to isolate travelers and magnify their sense of vulnerability. The moment Jay set his bag on a table, Max unzipped it and began rummaging through the contents with theatrical zeal. as if sure he'd unearth contraband hidden in the folds of clothing. Socks, press shirts, toiletry kits, and a folded novel were all scattered. Then Max snatched up Jay's travel wallet. "What's in here?" the officer demanded, even though it was obviously just bank cards and local currency. Jay frowned. "Money and IDs," he replied, adding an uneasy shrug for effect. "Do you have a reason to think otherwise?" Max fixed him with a cold glare. "I'll decide that," he said, rifling through the wallet. The defiance rankled Jay, but he forced himself to stay calm. He was here to gather data, not tip his hand prematurely. At last, Max tossed the wallet back with a dismissive grunt. "You're free to go," he said abruptly. "Next time, keep your stuff in order." With that, he waved Jay away, as though disgusted by the lack of anything worthy of confiscation. Jay slipped his scattered items back into the suitcase, methodically collecting mental notes. The undue aggression, the display of arrogance, the lack of genuine security rationale. This confirmed everything the complaints had alleged. Jay might have been just another victim, but as an undercover inspector, he saw these interactions through a sharper lens. He parted from the checkpoint with an odd cocktail of anger and professional detachment, determined to collect more evidence. Once clear of Max's territory, Jay sought a quiet nook near a currency exchange booth. He fished out his phone and updated his secure file, entering details about the time, location, and the entire humiliating exchange. The app he used was specifically designed for official inspectors, requiring biometric identification to unlock. Even if someone confiscated his phone, the data would be encrypted. After capturing the immediate details, he ducked into a restroom to swap out his shirt and slip on a thin jacket. Just enough of a change to help him move around the airport without being too easily recognized. He had the entire day ahead and planned on multiple passes through different lines, plus potential interviews with travelers who might have faced similar harassment. Some might be reluctant to speak, but Jay had developed subtle ways of striking up conversation, comments about flight delays or confusing gate announcements that opened the door to deeper chats. Over the next few hours, he navigated the terminal like a detective in plain sight. He observed Max from various vantage points, behind a row of plants, near a cafe kiosk, and even from an upstairs lounge area that provided a panoramic view of the security checkpoint. Each time, Jay watched for patterns. It didn't take long to see how Max zeroed in on his targets. He stopped an elderly woman who spoke with a French accent, rummaging through her carry-on and making derisive remarks about her inability to follow directions. He cornered a young man who wore a bright traditional outfit, forcing him to remove his shoes and belt after the scanner beeped once, something he rarely demanded of well-dressed professionals in suits. Even from afar, Jay could sense the traveler's shame and disorientation. After each incident, Max moved on with a look of satisfaction, as though feeding on their discomfort. Jay recorded every detail, quietly outraged yet steadfast in his mission. Late that afternoon, he tried another approach. He positioned himself near the arrivals area, where disoriented newcomers emerged from long flights, dragging their suitcases. Some eventually had to re-enter the security lines if they were catching connecting flights. Jay struck up conversations with those who looked shaken. A few confided they had just been yelled at by a security officer, tall, cold-eyed, dripping with hostility. They complained about the humiliation of being singled out in front of everyone, forced to undergo repeated bag checks. One man had had his carefully folded suits tossed around like trash, with no apology afterward. A woman described how Max's scolding nearly made her miss her connecting flight. Each account matched the pattern Jay had already documented. By evening, Jay's digital evidence folder was filling up with notes and short video clips. He captured grainy shots of Max questioning travelers, watched from a safe distance, occasionally turning on the phone's microphone to gather additional sound bites. The brazen nature of it all, Max's willingness to go after anyone who failed to meet his personal standard, both infuriated and motivated Jay. He knew if he gathered enough proof, the airport's leadership and the African Union Commission would have no choice but to act decisively. As darkness fell, the terminal's energy shifted. Reduced crowds offered a more somber, subdued vibe. Jay took this lull as an opportunity to regroup. So he settled in a cafe near the international gates, sipping a mild cup of ginger tea. He scrolled through the day's recordings. Each snippet told the same story. An officer puffed up with authority, spewing intimidation. It struck Jay how, if not for official whistleblowers and passenger complaints, nobody might ever have realized the extent of this behavior. So many travelers just accept airport hassle as the price of flying. And bullies like Max relied on that complacency. A memory flickered through Jay's mind. The day he decided to join the commission after his uncle, a well-respected security coordinator, told him about these hidden injustices. Some folks wear a badge only to inflate themselves, his uncle had warned. It's up to people like us to keep them in check. Jay took that warning to heart. Early the next morning, he returned to the airport, blending in with the surge of travelers arriving for the day's first flights. He wore a simple pullover and jeans, a baseball cap pulled low over his forehead. Once again, Max was at his post, scanning the lines with predatory focus. Jay marveled at how quickly the man picked out new targets. A father who struggled with an infant stroller, a cluster of travelers wearing t-shirts in unfamiliar languages, an older gentleman with a cane. One by one, they were pulled aside and subjected to Max's invasive rants. Jay felt the tension coil in his stomach. He wanted to step in on behalf of those people, to reveal himself and put an immediate stop to it. But he resisted. He knew the operation's success lay in precise timing and comprehensive evidence. A single heroic outburst might warn Max to lay low, or worse, risk Jay's cover before he could escalate this to the very top of airport management. By mid-morning, Jay decided it was time for a second direct engagement. He carefully purchased a refundable ticket for a short domestic flight to Abuja, just so he could re-enter security with new documents. He changed into slightly nicer attire, a crisp collared shirt and matching slacks, then joined Max's lane, ensuring that his watch and phone would set off the scanner. Sure enough, the moment he stepped through, a beep squealed. Jay knew exactly how to angle this. Appear flustered, pretend to fumble with the watch, slip up with the phone. He hoped Max would seize the opening to harass him again. The plan worked flawlessly. Max, recognizing Jay only vaguely, the new clothes and lack of direct eye contact made him uncertain, demanded that he remove his watch and phone case. "You're holding up the line," Max snapped, loud enough for other travelers to hear. "Step aside. We're doing a more thorough check." Jay complied, letting himself look nervous as Max waved over another officer, who pointed to a stool in a cramped screening alcove. Jay sat down. Max stood inches away, exuding that oppressive aura of power he so loved to project. "So what's your business in Abuja?" he demanded. "Work," Jay mumbled, keeping his head bowed. Max's lip curled. "Work, is it? You sure you're not carrying anything else you shouldn't?" He grabbed Jay's carry-on bag, rummaging through it like a predator with fresh prey. Out came a small camera, a pair of headphones, a half-read magazine, and a leather-bound planner. Each item was inspected, turned over in Max's massive hands. He found nothing suspicious, of course. "All right," Max said at last, sounding disappointed. "Get your things, and don't be so clueless next time." Jay hurriedly packed up, channeling a traveler's relief at being released. Inside, though, he felt triumphant. Not only did this confirm Max's repeat offenses, but it also added fresh audio and partial video to the growing evidence. Jay quickly retreated to an out-of-the-way gate lounge, typed up his immediate impressions, and saved them to his secure folder. The pattern was undeniable now. Later that day, as Jay sipped water in a shady area near a local craft store inside the terminal, his phone buzzed. It was a message from his direct supervisor at the commission, reading, "You've collected enough. Time for the big reveal. Director of Aviation Enforcement, Ms. Zara Atta, is flying in this afternoon. She'll coordinate with you for a final on-site confrontation. Good luck." Jay's pulse quickened. The end game was approaching. He replied with a terse confirmation and began planning his approach. If Ms. Atta was personally coming to the airport, they intended to catch Max in the act, with management present, so there'd be no chance of burying the matter. That evening, An air of anticipation settled over the terminal. Jay met discreetly with two local airport supervisors, Tund and Farida, who had also grown tired of Max's misconduct. While they didn't have the authority to override him on their own, they gladly cooperated with Jay once they realized the commission was involved. Over hushed conversation near a maintenance corridor, they hashed out the plan. Farida would alert the airport's acting director when Ms. Atta arrived. Tund would position himself near the security checkpoint, ready to record any confrontation on an official device. Jay, playing the role of a traveler one more time, would approach Max with a new ticket in hand. If all went well, Ms. Atta and the airport director would witness Max crossing the line. Jay could then reveal himself and present the trove of evidence. For the rest of the night, he made sure to remain out of Max's sight. He found a quiet bench near an unoccupied boarding gate, set an alarm on his phone, and tried to doze. Sleep came in fits, overshadowed by the tension of the showdown looming on the horizon. When he awoke, the early rays of morning gave the terminal a sense of fragile calm. Flight announcements resumed, lines formed, and travelers circulated to coffee stands and check-in counters. Jay tossed on a coat, a small attempt to change his silhouette, and purchased yet another fully refundable ticket, this time for a regional flight to Ghana. Soon, he took his place in Max's line, eyes peeled. Word had reached him that Ms. Atta would be on site at any moment, joined by the airport's top management. This was the critical hour. He tried not to glance around too much, lest Max pick up on the tension in his body language. Finally, as the line edged forward, Jay spotted Tund lingering behind a kiosk. That was the signal. Ms. Atta must have arrived. Now all Jay needed was for Max to do what he'd done repeatedly, spot something he didn't like, and pounce. As Jay approached the checkpoint, he deliberately let his phone's alarm go off, pretending he hadn't disabled it. The ringing was shrill enough to draw attention. Immediately, Max swiveled his head and locked onto Jay. "Whose phone is that?" he barked. "Turn it off before you get to my checkpoint." Several travelers flinched at the volume of his voice, stepping aside to avoid trouble. Jay fumbled with the phone, making a show of embarrassment. Max's eyes narrowed. "You," he said, stabbing a finger in Jay's direction. "Set it down. Right here. I'm not letting you through until I check what else you've got going on." That was the opening. Jay moved forward and placed the phone on a nearby tray, raising both hands to show he would comply. "There's nothing else," he said softly, projecting the same vulnerable vibe he'd presented all week. Max scoffed. "I'll decide that," he spat, motioning for the official worker to hand him Jay's boarding pass and ID. The worker looked unsettled, but obeyed. Within moments, Max was flipping through the documents, stalling as though scanning for a reason to accuse Jay of wrongdoing. By now, Tund had inched closer, phone camera at the ready. In the distance, Jay glimpsed Ms. Atta and the airport director stepping into view behind a row of pillars, accompanied by Farida. They appeared to be watching silently, letting events play out. "Open that bag," Max demanded, pointing to Jay's carry-on. Jay unzipped it with deliberate slowness, revealing the usual items for a short flight. Max rummaged through each piece, pulling them out and dropping them on the table carelessly. The crowd behind them grew impatient, murmuring complaints. Max ignored them, too enthralled by his performance of authority. "Anything else you're hiding?" he growled, glaring at Jay. "Any liquids over the limit? Sharp objects? Suspicious electronics?" He picked up Jay's phone with a sneer. "Because this sure got my attention." Jay put on a quavering tone. "That was just my alarm, I'm sorry." Max jabbed the phone into Jay's shoulder, not forcefully enough to injure him, but enough to show disrespect. "Next time, you wait until you're out of my line to play with your phone. Got it?" Jay steadied himself, glancing at Tund. He saw Tund give a subtle nod, indicating that Ms. Atta and the director were in perfect vantage. Now was the moment. Jay drew a breath and spoke up with unexpected resolve. "You're out of line, Officer Adeyemi." The shift in tone startled Max. He eyed Jay suspiciously. "Excuse me." "I said you're out of line," Jay repeated, standing straighter and letting confidence shine through. And my name isn't just Jay Balogun, a random traveler. I'm Inspector Jay Balogun with the African Union Commission on Aviation Security. You've harassed me and countless others under false pretenses. A hush fell, as if every traveler and airport staffer in earshot realized something seismic was happening. Max stiffened, confusion warred with anger on his face. "What kind of nonsense are you talking?" he demanded, though his voice was suddenly less sure. Before he could continue, Ms. Zara Atta stepped forward, flanked by the airport director, who wore a stern expression. "It's not nonsense," she said. "I am Director Atta with the Commission, and Mr. Balogun has been here under my authority to investigate numerous complaints about your behavior." The airport director added, "And we've just witnessed enough to confirm the allegations firsthand." Max's face went ashen. He opened his mouth, likely to protest, but nothing came out. The color in his cheeks flared a deeper hue. Whispers and gasps spread among the passengers in line. Some lifted their phones to record the confrontation. "All of this is a misunderstanding," Max finally managed, voice quivering. Director Atta cut him off. "There's nothing to misunderstand. We have video evidence and sworn statements. We've watched you humiliate travelers without cause, rummaging through their belongings with no regard for procedure or respect." Jay stepped forward and quietly showed his credentials, which displayed the Commission's official seal. "I've spent days collecting testimonies and footage from the people you've harassed," he told Max. "We have more than enough proof to recommend immediate disciplinary action. Your superiors at the private security firm will be contacted, and so will federal aviation authorities." Max's eyes darted around, as if hoping for backup. None arrived. The official airport worker who'd been forced to yield to Max's commands exhaled in relief, looking ready to see justice served. Tund, still recording, captured the mixture of shock and fury on Max's face. The airport director gestured firmly. "Mr. Adeyemi, step away from this checkpoint. Effective immediately, your access is revoked. We will escort you to an administrative office for a formal review." In that moment, it was as though the mighty edifice of Max's intimidation collapsed in on itself. His broad shoulders sagged, and he looked smaller under the gazes of travelers who once cowered at his presence. Two uniformed staffers stepped forward to relieve him of his badge and any security credentials he possessed. "This isn't over," Max mumbled, perhaps as a final attempt to save face. But it was over. He was led away, the authority he'd clung to so desperately stripped from him in a matter of minutes. Some bystanders cheered, while others stared in disbelief. Jay took a measured breath, the adrenaline coursing through him. This was the culminating moment he'd been working toward, the reason for all those carefully gathered files and interviews. Director Atta turned to the onlookers, raising her voice so they could hear. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for any distress caused by these incidents. Our mission is to ensure everyone's dignity and safety. If this story resonates with you, please remember to share your experiences so we can continue improving. And for those of you who believe in standing against abuse of power, do me a favor, drop a like, hit subscribe, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Awareness is our strongest ally in bringing lasting change." With Max gone, tension visibly melted from the checkpoint area. Airport supervisors swooped in to re-establish order and direct travelers through the lines with courtesy. No one was singled out unfairly. The lightness in the air felt almost shocking. Jay collected his belongings, returning the watch and phone he'd deliberately set off. As he walked away, Tund patted him on the shoulder. "We owe you a big thanks, Inspector," Tund said, beaming. Farida joined in. "I can't tell you how many complaints we've fielded about that man. We tried to raise alarms, but were brushed off. Your thoroughness changed everything." Jay gave them a modest smile. "I hope the airport implements better oversight. Nobody should endure what he put people through." Ms. Atta nodded in agreement. "With the evidence you've gathered, plus what happened today, the Commission can and will push for a review of all security contracts. We'll recommend that any officer who fails to meet professional standards be immediately removed." They moved en masse toward an administrative corridor where a larger post-incident briefing would unfold. Jay was prepared to hand over every recording and piece of testimony. For him, it was both a relief and a solemn reminder of the mission, ridding airports of individuals who twisted security into a personal power trip. Hours later, once all the statements had been formalized and the final report submitted, Jay stepped outside into the warm Lagos sun. He found a bench near a lush row of palm trees lining the airport road. Exhaustion hit him in waves, but also a sense of deep satisfaction. This was how real progress began, by shining a light on wrongdoing, day by day. He closed his eyes, letting the bustle of taxis and honking cars wash over him. Suddenly, he recalled the Commission's policy of quick redeployments. There would be another city, another airport, another round of hush-hush research. It never really ended. As he contemplated his next steps, his phone lit up with a message from Ms. Atta. "Well done. Headquarters will be eager for your full debrief. Stand by for further instructions." Jay typed back a brief acknowledgement. Then, with a small grin, he went to record a final audio note for his personal log. Case closed at Murtala Muhammad. Max Adeyemi, relieved of duties. Director Atta authorized full review. Evidence conclusive. On to the next assignment. He paused, gazing at the swirl of travelers rushing in and out of the terminal. Then he added, "If this story moves you, don't forget to like and subscribe. We need every voice in this fight for fairness." And with that, he ended the recording, gathered his suitcase, and headed for the taxi line, resolved to carry his commitment to justice wherever his next mission called him.